specific, very detailed, and you must operate at all times within those criteria. So you monitor to make sure that you stay within those criteria at all times.
Oh, okay, thank you. We have to go back to, we'll get back to this later. Let's go to Durham first.
We have a question now.
I have a question for Mr. Kirk. On June 12th in Oxford, during the meeting there, you brought up several times the state of the art and the expertise. I need to ask you something. You told us you had never built a dump. You never built an incinerator like the one for North Carolina. How in the world can you so loosely use these two words?
Well, I think our company has a lot of expertise. We're a $200 million company with 1,600 professional engineers who have worked on these projects worldwide. We've worked on incinerators, landfills, solvent recovery systems, and in fact we've put on many seminars to really hit the key items, which are reduction and recycling. So we work in all facets of this.
We have a follow-up question for Mr. Kirk.
I'm Rick Held from Chatham County, which is not Granville or Iredell, but I don't want it in either Granville or Iredell's backyard either. I have a question for the representative from the incinerator company. You mentioned a few minutes ago that the last time there was a check of your facility in South Carolina that there was no contamination found. I'd like to ask you, how many times has Thermochem facility been cited by the state of South Carolina in the last 2 years for violations?
Well, we currently have no violations of our permit. Sightings, because of the way that the process works, so we're audited about 100 times a year by the federal EPA, the state, our customers, our insurance carriers. Every time they come through, they list items that they'd like us to concentrate on, items they'd like us to be concerned about, improve, and we do that. So the issue of EPA coming in and looking at our facility very thoroughly, we think is very healthy.
I believe the question, Mr. Kirk, was how many times were you cited in the last 2 years?
Well, we have no violations of our permit.
How many citations were issued?
In terms of findings, I wouldn't know. I don't know how many findings there are. For example, they would talk about things like how many, are the lines painted yellow? Are the distance between the drums enough? Those kinds of things are typical and indeed very thorough.
Let's go back to Charlotte.
Okay, David, we have a question here. Your name, sir?
Dr. Mark Guerra. It's a statement to Dr. Linda Little. I'm the physician that takes care of the workers from Caldwell County. They've been evaluated by myself, neurology specialist from Duke University, occupational specialist from San Francisco, California, psychiatrist from Hickory, neuropsychologist from Duke, as well as Hickory, and the consensus of opinion is that they have neuropsychological problems and brain disorders as a direct result of their exposures to hazardous waste while working at Caldwell Systems. Secondly, I'm taking care of residents that have had exposures to chlorine emissions from Caldwell Systems that have respiratory illnesses directly related to those emissions, very clearly, documented by myself as well as consultants from Duke University.
Making a statement to Dr. Linda Little in Durham. Do you wish to respond, Ms. Little?
Yes, I do. I have not done the study. I would like to ask Dr. Guerrero if he has found that they have tied the illnesses of these patients directly to their occupational exposures, and what the opinion of Dr. Greg Smith and the other environmental epidemiologists have been along those lines. And also, has there been cooperation by the local citizens in having an epidemiological study done?
Okay, the answer to the first question is yes. These exposures, both by dermal contact and inhalation contact, are responsible for their neurologic problems and the brain disorders that they suffer from. It is very unusual to see a 27-year-old with Parkinson's disease that cannot walk across the room and that cannot remember from moment to moment. Secondly, I believe that if you were to talk with the citizens in the audience, perhaps Ms. Miller, Mr. Kuntz, and the Johnsons, they can better discuss the trust that they had with the state. Our experience in Caldwell County is that we can't trust the state. We can't trust them to tell us the truth. We can't tell us to give us a straight answer, and we certainly can't trust us to protect them, protect us.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Dave Bullock, back in Durham.
I've got a question for Mr. Pike and Mr. Combs. What are we going to do with this stuff? The state's awash in hazardous waste. You guys say you don't want an incinerator. Well, give me an answer.
Well, I think that there are several very good things that can be done about hazardous waste now. What we think is that if the state had spent the time and money that it's spent trying to site an incinerator in an environmental sacrifice zone over the last 5 years on a serious waste reduction program, that we would not be facing this problem today. And what we're asking is that the monies that are being diverted for waste management now be sent back into waste reduction so that we do not have to face this problem 5 years from now. During that 5-year period, if we have to store waste or treat waste in state, we are recommending that they do it in retrievable above ground storage on site at the site of generation.
Dr. Turner, is that even a reasonable thought? I mean, we can play what if all night, but is there a problem that needs to be addressed?
Oh, yes, of course there's a problem. This is not reasonable at all. First of all, that would mean that every industry in the state would have to have a RCRA storage permit, because you can only store hazardous waste for 90 days without such a permit. This would make every industry in our state would have to have that permit. The other thing is, I am all in favor, even though I don't think many people believe it. I think recycling, waste minimization is the answer also. But I don't believe it can be done in the next few years to the point where you will not need an incinerator to treat the waste. I believe after that, let's hope that we can do that. We can reduce the waste to the point where we don't need an incinerator in the future. Whether that'll be 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, I don't think any of us know.
John Pike?
Waste minimization is a fraud. It's just an absolute lie to the people of the state of North Carolina. There is no waste reduction. The incinerator makes it cheaper and easier to continue to create hazardous waste. 90% of the people will tell you what to do with it, reduce it. 90% of the people are willing to pay the price, willing to sacrifice. The 10% that aren't are the people that are making it, and the governor and the legislators who are passing these insane laws.
Dr. Linda Little, you want to respond to that? Would you respond?
Yes, I would. The state has placed a very large emphasis on waste reduction. Our projections for the size of incinerator and other types of capacity needed that we made for the capacity assurance plan assume that we will have one of the most aggressive waste minimization, waste prevention programs in the country. I was at a meeting last week of representatives from all over the country. We have one of the highest projected rates of waste reduction, but no matter how much we try, there will always be some left. And the fact is that once you've reduced it and you cannot reduce it further, incineration is recommended by EPA as a means of dealing with both the toxicity and the volume of that waste.
Let's go now to Brian and Charlotte.
Thank you, Dave. With me, Diane Hamby from Statesville, who has a very gut question, I guess you could say. I think basically for Dr. Turner or perhaps Linda Little. Diane?
Dr. Turner, I want to know why the state and the citizens of North Carolina are being made liable for big industries' inability to handle their toxic waste. Why are we underwriting this policy?
My only response to that is, and it's a very good question, that 90% of all the hazardous waste generated in North Carolina is being managed by industry, by big industry. It's only 10% of the waste that is shipped off-site that needs to be treated somewhere else. They also are reducing their waste, and that's not my answer. That's the data from the state.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Turner. Let me ask Dr. Conant up on stage here in Charlotte. You said earlier, I believe, though, that you think that with proper recycling, virtually all of the remaining waste could be incinerated on site. Is that a scientifically supported theory?
Well, I think it's very important that we don't, when you use the word recycling, I'm talking about waste reduction, waste exchange, recycling, chemical treatment to remove metals, chemical treatment to remove chlorine, and then essentially what you're left burning is a mixture of hydrocarbons, like burning oil. And then I think it's manageable on site. I think I'm very disturbed to hear Ms. Little and Dr. Turner talk about how aggressive the recycling is in North Carolina when you know that the budget says otherwise. The budget says very little money is going into waste reduction, recycling, and chemical treatment. And And meanwhile, an enormous amount of money and millions upon millions of dollars has been talked about for this site. I went to the site in one place today near Statesville, 1,300 acres. I cannot believe that you need 1,300 acres of beautiful agricultural land, beautiful land to take care of this minute, according to Dr. Turner, 10% of the recyclables left over from North Carolina. And emphasizing what someone else has just said, if you build this huge facility, if you put it in the hands of a company like Thermal Ken, which is in the business to make money, that's not their fault, that's what they're in for, to make money, if you recycle in North Carolina, you'll simply be importing this waste from other parts of the country.
Thank you, Dr. Conant. And let's go back now to Durham.
In all of Granville County, out of all the thousands of people that are against the incinerator going there, we found one gentleman who is for it. Barry Cates, your question.
Yes, my question is to the Thermal Chem representative. Will the technology involving the incinerator be the latest and best available?
Well, the technology we propose is proven technology. It's the types of units in the recycling. For example, these seals are used and used broadly in industry. The landfill will be the most current proven designs with all the required federal mandates in terms of liners and double collection systems and instrumentation. And the incinerator is like other incinerators that currently run in the state.
I would like to say one other thing. Each one of us indirectly is responsible for all the hazardous waste produced by the products we consume and the goods we use. So therefore, I feel it's our responsibility to get rid of it. And at the present time, in my opinion, the only way to get rid of it is an incinerator. And I stand by my decision because I love this country, I love people, and I don't care what other people say, but I want to be responsible for it.
And we will be back in a moment after these messages.
In Charlotte, a question from a lady from Anson County for Dr. Linda Little in Durham.
Yes, Dr. Little, I would like to know how much more capacity you feel that the state of North Carolina needs to handle hazardous waste, when right now that Carolina Solite and Aquadel is burning 31,000 tons of hazardous waste, and 88% of the waste brought into Carolina Solite came from other states. And right now Carolina Solite has already imported last year hazardous waste in from 12 other states, and their permit allows them to bring hazardous waste in from foreign countries.
Okay. The Carolina Solite operation is an operation which burns those wastes with sufficiently high BTU and those that fall in a fairly narrow category of kinds of waste. They burn that as fuel in their industrial operations. That facility can take only a very limited number of kinds of hazardous waste. North Carolina's hazardous waste, the majority of it is not suitable for that particular type of operation. The other states to which we are shipping our waste refuse to consider that facility as a facility for negotiation because it's energy recovery and because there's other energy recovery capacity. There is a shortage in the southeast of solids incineration. That is why North Carolina was asked to provide that part if it continued to be expecting to use the disposal facilities and the aqueous treatment facilities in other states.
Dr. Little, I think the answer, the lady from Anson County disagrees with you, but we're going to move on to Brian Thompson now.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I think one thing you've probably seen tonight in this town meeting and what we've also seen in Durham as well as here in Charlotte is that a lot of people have become experts in their own way on something that is threatening to them, at least for those folks who live near the sites in Granville and Rowan-Iredell counties, as well as people who, in a sense, have become experts from living near to these facilities as they've existed elsewhere, be it Rock Hill or Caldwell County or up in Albemarle area of Stanley County. That is perhaps one of the lessons that we've learned is when it does threaten our backyard, people focus their attention very, very intensely. Dave Bolick in Durham.
Also, I think there's no question that this program could probably have gone on for another 2 or 3 hours. We have stacks of questions, people angry that they didn't get to ask their questions. We hope that we will be able to address the question at a later time. Closing statements first from Dr. Alvis Turner of the Hazardous Waste Management Commission, and then from Mike Warren, the chairman of the Granville County Board of Commissioners. Dr. Turner.
First thing that I would like people to remember, if they will, the chemicals that we would be burning in this incinerator are the very same chemicals that all the employees in industry across the state are using every day in their jobs, the very same chemicals. They're not exotic. We haven't brought them from space. They're the ones used in our industries every day. The second thing that I would like for them to remember is that there are hazardous waste being treated all over the state on the grounds of industries every day in North Carolina. And three, be careful about imposing health risk on this type of facility without having documented evidence.
Mike Warren, Granville County Commission Chairman.
In 1987, Granville County was not one of the sites. Most of the sites at our site now were. I do not wish upon the citizens of this state the hell that the citizens of this county have had to go through. It's drained our human resources. It has also drained our economic resources. And I asked all the citizens of North Carolina to look and listen to what you've heard tonight. We in Granville County have studied this situation for 2 months, almost 24 hours a day. We have found that it's a health risk. We have found that it can economically affect the community. We have found that the incinerator itself could be state-of-the-art, but this particular incinerator for North Carolina will be a new art. I suggest you get on the phones wherever you are, whatever county, because it may not be Granville. Next time, it may be you, and call your legislature and ask the Hazardous Waste Commission and our governor and our legislators to seek other alternatives.
Now let's go to Charlotte. Brian Thompson.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And with me again, Patricia Link, who's been fighting this battle so long. Do you have a closing thought here, Patricia?
Well, I think it's outrageous that it's up to the citizens of the state to prove that these facilities are not safe. I would just like to close by saying that we are united in our fight. We will not allow North Carolina to become a dumping state.
Thank you, Patricia. My colleague, Chris Clackham.
It has been no surprise to anyone here or viewing, or anyone in the state of North and South Carolina for that matter, that this issue is a very emotional issue. As Dave Bullock mentioned a few moments ago, Larry Stogner, we wish we had several more hours. We could easily fill that time. There are many questions that remain unanswered about this issue on both sides of the fence. Hopefully, sometime very soon, we're going to get all the answers. Larry?
Well, you're right, Chris. For the first time, all parties in the hazardous waste controversy have been able to at least hear each other's point of view. It has been a unique experience that hopefully will help us all understand this issue a little bit better than we did 1 hour ago. It will not go away, and we must deal with it. For Chris Clackham and Brian Thompson in Charlotte and Dave Bullock in Durham, our studio audiences in both locations, I'm Larry Stogner. Good night, everyone.